Hey Quilters and Sewers, Heidi Perfetti here. This is day 3 and I'm actually doing some free motion quilting work with the brand new Janome M7 Continental, and I've just got to say what an incredible machine this is. I'm going to share some of the features that I found that I really liked in terms of using free motion quilting, and hopefully you'll find those helpful. So the very first thing that I want to talk about is customizing your machine settings. So I'm going to click on this little gear right here. And by the way, right now we are in the utility screen, or the home screen if you will, and you can see up here are the categories of stitches. And right now we have just your straight stitch options available, your free motion straight stitch, etc. And that's because I have the straight stitch needle plate in the machine, and that has a sensor, so it understands, the machine understands that you can't do any zigzag stitching. So what I'm going to do is go into this little gear right here, and we're going to take a look at customizing some of the machine settings so that it makes it easier for the things that I use over and over again, just setting up that customization for me. And under machine settings, you can see you can change the screen brightness, bobbin winding speed. You can change, it has 1, 2, 3 LED lights, 2 over the bed, 1 over the needle, and you can turn those lights on and off, and you can save those settings as well. Date and time settings, your clock, messages that you wish to turn on or off, touchscreen calibration, and it just goes on and on. In the very last page, if you make any kind of crazy changes that you can't seem to get back out of, or reset if you will, the last option on the machine is reset to all factory defaults, and you can choose yes, and that will reset your sewing machine back to all of the Janome factory defaults. We're going to click over to the second tab, and this is your sewing settings. So you have the same customization options under here. There's one of 4 pages. Needle down in fabric always, or your tension, presser foot pressure, feed dogs up or down always. So you can go through and make many customizations. I'm going to go to page 4, and I'm going to turn on, because it's off when you get your machine, favorite stitch adjustment. And reason that I'm doing this is that you have the ability to customize some of your stitch settings that you use over and over again. I'm going to turn that feature on in here, so now when I go to save some of those settings under those stitches, it'll actually remember my favorite customization settings each time that I go back to work on my quilt. So I'm going to say OK there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the t-shirt, which is where you find your quilting stitches, and I'm going to click on the second tab over, which is feathers and that little heart icon, and you can see all of your quilting choices come up: patchwork, ruler work, straight stitch, hand look. I'm going to click into free motion because that's what I'm going to be doing. Now again, you can see just the straight stitch options are on because I don't have that plate with the zigzag opening, so just my straight stitch choices are available to me. So in the straight stitch number 1 is with your, to be used with your hopping foot. It tells you with this little picture what foot you need to be using, okay? So you can use your open and your closed toe hopping feet, the PDH feet, which come with this machine. What I like to use is my open toe, or QO, clear foot. So I'm going to pick straight stitch number 2, and I can be using this open toe or the closed toe clear foot. And we're just going to put this on the machine and lower my presser foot to snap it on, and you can see how easy that was. Okay, so now I have my foot on the machine, and I want to talk about the tension a little bit. So I sew with a very fine thread, and you can see right now I'm going to open up the tension. The factory default is 4.6, and that's really too tight. I need that to be much looser for the fine thread that I'm working with. So I'm going to drop, and this is where that favorite stitch customization or setting comes into play. So I'm going to drop my tension way, way down for this invisible monopoly thread. I think it pulls out very nicely at a 1, believe it, extremely low tension. Okay, and down at the bottom you can see this is your favorite stitch panel, and I'm going to save this setting now under favorite stitch number 1 for free motion. So once I pick that, you can see that the box is now highlighted in yellow. That means anytime you see that little yellow box over your machine stitch settings, you've made some kind of customization setting to override the factory default settings. So now I'm going to minimize the tension, and I'm going to move up to the top here and just talk about these features or categories at the top under free motion. So I could have my needle stop, take one stitch and stop, okay, down in the fabric for quilting, but I'm going to choose to turn that off. So once I do that, you can see other options available to me would be pivot, auto pivot, and you can see in this option here, the needle is to stop in the down fabric position. If I didn't want that, I could change it, but I'm going to leave that turned on. The fourth one over is your feed dogs, and this is pretty cool because you don't have to lower your feed dogs manually anymore because you are doing free motion work. The sensors in the machine automatically understand that your feed dogs need to be lowered. So there's no lever on this machine. It just automatically happens. So that is a really nice feature that you don't have to even think about lowering those feed dogs anymore. The fifth category over is the height of your presser foot to the bed of your machine or to the top of your quilt loft, if you will. So in this particular case, I'm going to click on this, and you can see the factory setting is 1.5 millimeters. I work with a very thin loft, so I need my presser foot to be lowered to the appropriate height of this fabric. So, or this quilt, I should say. So I'm going to lower the adjustment to bring that foot down, and as I'm doing that, I can hear it clicking, and I test it just to see if that feels good. And you know, somewhere about 1.1, 1.2 is good. You don't want to lower it too much that you can't move your quilt freely underneath your presser foot, and you don't want it too high so that your stitches are jumping out all over the place or you get skipped stitches. So once I'm happy with that, I'll say okay. And now I will just show you quickly how I do some free motion quilting with these finer threads. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my needle down into my fabric, and I'm going to pull up my bobbin thread, which you can see, and I'm going to lower that needle back down, and I'm going to put on, I don't use gloves, I use these very non-quilting grippers, if you will, but they work really well for me. So I'm going to take a couple locking stitches, and right now you can see I have my speed control somewhere between the low to medium, and that means I'm using my foot control. That means my foot control will only go as fast as what I have selected on my speed slider. So here we go, and I'm going to take a few locking stitches, and then I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to clip those threads. I jumped a little bit there, but you'll get the point. And then I'm just going to start quilting. Okay, and what I am trying to do is I'm securing my pieces with my quilting, my free motion quilting, and I am giving some texture to those pieces. I don't use colored threads. I use, like I said, the invisible monopoly thread, and that's because I don't want to take away from the overall mosaic design that I have created. So you can see me here moving right along. need to stop, I stop. Of course, I selected needle down in fabric, so that will keep that needle down in the fabric so I can lift my hands and reposition my grippers and continue on. In this case, I'm going to come right off this piece. Now, ordinarily, I would chain right over to this next piece and I would start quilting on that, but I'm going to stop here and I'm going to do just a couple either needle up, down, or I'll take a couple locking stitches real close to each other. Okay, and then I'm going to draw my thread out towards me just like you do with a long arm, and I'm going to hold on to it, and I'm going to drop my needle back in and raise my bobbin thread up, and then I'm going to snip those threads. Okay, now I want to show you how nice these stitches look, and I think you can see that there. I'll come a little closer because it is invisible thread. It might be difficult to see, but just beautiful stitches, and the back side looks just as nice. So those are my stitches on the back side. Yeah, so I'm super pleased with the quality and, of course, all the thought process that went into designing this machine, and it's really going to make my quilting such a breeze. And so I just thought I would share this information with you because you might find it helpful. So thank you for watching.